Okay guys, it has been a red hot minute since I have done a Couch Chats episode. And what better time than to come back and start a new one than at 3 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep. I also just broke my blind behind me trying to close it. So that's really annoying. I'm sitting here with my hot chockey. Like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was only talking to my son last night about starting the podcast again, and I promised him that I would do it. So I'm doing it. It has been an absolute red hot minute. So much has happened since I recorded the last episode. If you'll notice by my videos, I'm living in a different house now. So I've moved house. Last time I was doing Couch Chats, I was in a really high pressure corporate role. And it got to a point after the 2-year mark that I couldn't do it anymore. And this is the job that I had perceived to be my dream job. And truth be told, I did actually really love the job. I just didn't love the environment. It was extremely toxic. The anxiety that I had every time I had to face my manager was just off the charts. And then I ended up just being on the road like 5 days a week, and then, coming home after work and driving around with the kids. And like I said, after 2 years, I got to a point where I honestly felt like I was that mentally fried or that stressed. I don't really know what it was, that it was going to kill me in the end. I mean, my mental health was really, really suffering from the job anyway, which could have been the reason that it pushed me over the edge. So in the end, I had to choose myself. And that's where the real journey began, guys. So in an attempt to make a choice that I thought was better for me, and would save me, essentially, completely broke me. So when I left my job, I figured I'd have a couple of months off work. Just a little summer vacay. So I finished up my role in the December. And historically for me, it's been very, very easy to find jobs. I've never had an issue finding jobs. Every time I've interviewed for a job or jobs, I would end up having 3 offers presented to me. And it was always a running joke that I literally would have 3 offers presented to me, and I would have the option to choose whichever job that I wanted, right? So I confidently left this job because I'm like, it'll be really easy to find something else, especially given now that I've held this title in this role. Surely this means that it would make it even easier for me to get something else. That was my first mistake. It took me so long to find a new job. And after rejection, after rejection, after rejection, it really fed that already insecure mental state that I was in from the toxicity of the previous role. And I had applied for hundreds of jobs at this point, but I was trying to stay positive. I'm like, you know what? I need some time off anyway. It's fine. I'll just have a little bit longer off than I expected. I was also in the middle of producing a new podcast. So through Couch Chats previously, I had met a couple of different people that wanted to come on the journey with me and collaborate. So the first person who wanted to start a podcast with me, we had spoken about the idea, we had recorded an episode, and then she just disappeared. And I didn't know what was going on. And then her and I ended up catching up later on and discussing it. And it turns out she had just completely cut me off. She didn't want to be my friend anymore. She didn't tell me about it. Anyway, so when we reconnected, that's when we decided, let's do a podcast together. And then, we kept talking about it. We did a couple of episodes, and then again, she just went MIA. So I just assumed that she had just cut me off again like she had before. And I was like, I don't need this in my life. So I just moved on with my life. And then the other person that wanted to do a podcast with me, her and I had started, we had photo shoots, we had artwork done, we were recording in a proper studio, which cost a fortune. And it was really good, and like to record in a proper podcast studio was amazing. And I wasn't working at the time, so I was like, that was my kind of beacon of light and hope at that time, because I'm like, that's okay. The reason why I'm not finding a job right now is because this incredible, amazing podcast is going to take off. We're going to be famous. I'm going to be the next Jackie O. And this is pretty much like when Jackie O had started her besties podcast with her friend Gemma. So I was like, yes, I'm going to be the next Jackie O. This is incredible. So, I was kind of unemployed, living my best life, going to Sydney each week, recording, feeling like on top of the world. And then a few cracks started to appear, a few red flags started to show. She started just saying some things that just felt really off to me and that just weren't adding up. Her mental state became very questionable, and she actually ended up in a mental home having a complete breakdown. And I had to completely cut off that relationship with her because it was really affecting me the way that she was treating me. And that podcast just completely burnt to the ground. And that was all burning to the ground at the same time as another few hectic things in my life were going on. So after months of trying to find a job and just like becoming extremely desperate, all my savings were disappearing. I was starting to panic. I reconnected with someone I used to work with who had started their own company, and I started working for him. And, oh God, when I first met up with him, like he was fine over the phone, but then in person when I met up with him, when someone's just like really jittery and shaky, like they were on drugs or had just been on a bender, or like maybe he's just really nervous because we haven't seen each other in a long time. But he was like, I don't know, something felt really off about him, but I was like, you know what? I can acknowledge the red flags, I can see them, but right now my priority is earning an income. So I took the job and I started working for him. A week into the role, he completely abused me out of nowhere over something not work related whatsoever, which really affected me, especially considering my last role and what was happening with that person. How they were treating me in this whole podcast incident. It was just like a compound of different things that were happening. And then I was like, I called him up and set some boundaries with him, and he apologized and said that he was completely in the wrong and he couldn't believe he acted that way. And then HR rang me and apologized on his behalf and give them another chance and blah, blah, blah. So I did. And of course, I really needed an income. And it just went from bad to worse. And, I ended up getting accused of fraud and all these horrific things that happened because someone hacked into their systems. And so I ended up having to walk away from that role. The same time as my podcast was crashing and burning to the ground. And then my dryer, sounds so dumb, my clothes dryer fell off the wall onto me. And immediately I felt my lower back just go. So that was the beginning of that injury. And then I had taken up a commission-only role selling solar just to try and, earn any money, which just cost me money in the end because I didn't make a cent from it. Maybe I was just really bad at it. I don't know. I've worked in sales my whole life, so I don't think that was the issue. Selling solar was definitely not for me though. But on the way out to one of the appointments one day, I actually crashed my car into a pole, and it twisted my pelvis really badly in my neck. Like my whole body was out of alignment, which is funny because my whole life felt completely out of alignment. And if you're someone who likes the woo-woo like I do, I call it the woo-woo, but I don't think it's the woo-woo. When things are out of alignment in your life, it shows up in our physical, like our body and everything. And I was like completely unaligned and out of whack. And I was in a huge amount of pain, which led to the most horrific sciatica, to the point where I could barely even walk, 10 minutes around the block. And for someone who is extremely active and someone who really enjoyed doing big long walks as a way to assist, in maintaining a good mental health. Like for me, physical activity and exercise is like a vital part of having good mental health, like physical health, but mental health as well. And then that was completely taken away from me. So I started, then again, I was unemployed. I had that little boost of income from that role ended up lasting about, like 2.5 months. So it was a little, a godsend financially. Before that, like with the podcast, I'd been doing jobs on Airtasker, cleaning houses, delivering pamphlets, like just doing whatever I could. And I was literally, like, I kid you not, the kinds of jobs that I was willing to take just to earn an income at this point, I would have scraped chewing gum off the bottom of someone's shoes just to keep a roof over our heads at this point. It was ridiculous. It was so stressful. And I was the state sales manager for this really big fintech company before this. To go from that to not even being able to get a phone call from a cleaning company. Airtasker was different because that was private, but like I was getting rejected left, right, and center from just jobs that, like I could have done with my eyes closed. It was crazy. So yeah, a huge amount of pain. And I was literally selling my belongings. I was selling my clothes. I was selling furniture. I was selling knickknacks around the house. I was just doing whatever I could to keep us afloat during that time. And, interview after interview and rejection after rejection. I remember one job that I was going for, it was a 5-stage job interview, and it was like the last final interview. I went there and on the way, like a disaster completely happened. I ended up being a few minutes late to this interview. And this is after I literally had to run to the location. So I was a little bit, red and flustered by the time I got there. But anyway, I calmed myself. I was quite composed, just I would say talking like I am now, except for like I have a tendency on my chest to get a little bit red when I'm, flushed. And I'm also in perimenopause just to top it all off. So, hot flushes are a thing. I went through the interview, got asked a lot of questions. I thought it went quite well. And then I got a phone call afterwards saying that the man who had interviewed me didn't think I was resilient enough for the role. It's just an account management role. And I shared that response with a couple of people that knew me, knew everything that I'd been through in my life. I knew that I was well and truly one of the most resilient people ever. Like, to even be able to sit through the 5-stage interviews that I went through for this role, the online testing, everything, with literally my whole world burning around me, and to still show up poised and composed and articulate myself in a way, in a professional manner, and to be told that I wasn't resilient enough was just another needle in the voodoo doll that was, contributing to what was going on in my life at the moment, at that time. So I ended up catching up with an old friend, and she suggested that I start doing some energy healing with this lady who was local. So I did. And after the first treatment, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced this, and it sounds crazy talking about it, but I mean, I lived it and I experienced it, so I'll share my experience. But I came so unwell afterwards, and people call it like the purging of so much stored trauma and emotion in your body that, it's releasing it and it's purging it out. I was vomiting non-stop. And then, I get hot flushes through menopause. This was completely different. This was like someone held a ball of fire in my chest. And the hot flashes would get so bad that one time I actually blacked out from how much my body was burning up. And I couldn't even get out of bed. I ended up in hospital, and they're running tests and they couldn't find anything. And I said to my parents, like, I've just done this energy healing. I said, I know it sounds crazy. I said, but that's all I can put it down to, is that I'm literally just purging all of this stuff out of my system. And I was hesitant to go back for more treatments after that, because I was like, oh God, like, I don't want to get more sick. I don't want to keep ending up in hospital. And, I was quite unwell for the first few times. Like, I vomited quite a few times. And then, it started becoming a lot better after each treatment. And I've had a lot of treatment since, and I don't purge like that anymore. It's a lot of it's been cleared out, but it was absolutely insane. If anyone's ever experienced any energy healing like that, I'd like to know your experiences. I can't even really put it into words, but it was like, it's funny because I left that job in order to stop me from ending myself. And I feel like it led me to this journey that I went on, where essentially a part of me did die. And it was like a death and a rebirth experience. And I thought I'd been through some challenging things in my life, but this year, it wasn't this year, it was last year, hit me so differently. Like, never have I ever had to borrow money from anyone. Even when I was, 17-year-old mother, single mother, like young mum, which I didn't have much money then, but I always found a way to pay for everything. And it was one of those things about me, is that I always handled everything. I would always be like, don't worry, I'll work it out. And I always did. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't work it out. It didn't matter what I did. nothing worked. All the ways that I knew, like, that I trusted that I could make money in the past, just didn't happen. It was the most incredibly humbling, weird, debilitating, empowering experience of my whole life. I ended up finding a job which I was just in for a year. And I was so extremely grateful for that job. But after the year, I've moved on to a position now that suits me better, which was nice because I had time to actually look for jobs while I still had a job this time. I wasn't going to do the same thing as I did before and just left and leave the job and hope for the best. But something really profound about the experience that I went through last year is, again, reinforcing how much your environment affects you. And although the house that I was in was really small and really cute and it was well presented, it was just really affecting me. The space that I was in, it was depressing. And especially when I was working so hard and coming home to this space that didn't represent the value I was trying to, what's the word? Like the job that I was in and the value I was trying to set for myself was not represented when I would walk inside my front door every day. And then I moved to this house in January this year. I was still in my old job then. And things just immediately started shifting once my environment changed. And now I'm in this new role and this new house. And things, I don't know if it's a timeline shift or what it is, but things have started to change for the best. I really miss living in Sydney. That's been a really, really hard thing for me, was coming back to the Central Coast. And immediately when I moved back to the coast, my mental health decreased dramatically. And I'm not speaking badly about the coast. It's just my personal experience. I do not like it here. I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I'm aligned with the people that I want to be aligned with living here. I came back because my son was here, and it's really beautiful to have that relationship back with him again. But I've really struggled since I've been back. So my heart's been, torn between what I want and my child. So, and obviously I chose my child, but in return, I have suffered dramatically for making that choice. But I would, always choose that relationship with my children over everything. But I hold on to the hope that I will be back in Sydney one day and be living in an area that's more aligned with my energy, and just the people that I want to surround myself with. So my new job now, I do get to go down to Sydney 2 days a week to the office, and I'm always out and about for appointments, and I duck down there wherever I can. I was in the grounds in the city last night for dinner with my son, and it's just, God, that place just, there's something magical about it. It's the music, it's the decor, the vibe, just something about the buzz of the city that just lifts me up. It's just, when I drive over the Harbour Bridge, just this energy that comes into me. It's something that I just can't describe. And it's funny because so many people say, oh, you live on the coast, so it's so beautiful there, and they can't wait to get out of Sydney. And Whereas I'm the opposite. Like Sydney is what fills me with life and vibrancy, and it feeds my soul. And I think it's just important that we do whatever feeds our souls, no matter what it is, even if other people don't agree with what feeds your soul, because it may not feed theirs. But it's been a whirlwind of, gosh, what's this been like? It's supposed to be like 2 years since I've recorded, which that in itself is insane, because I just don't know where time is going these days. But I committed to coming back and doing my podcast again, YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, I was waiting until I had organized guests, but I figured, why not just jump on here solo and talk to you guys? So I would love to know what's been going on in your worlds. Has anyone been through energy healing like I had and experienced that purge or that tower moment or that timeline shift? I would love to hear from you, because it's like, yeah, it's an incredible experience if you've been through it, and it's only something that you can truly understand if you have experienced it yourself. So I would love to hear your experiences. It's great to be back, guys, and I will see you next time.